Welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. Here we'll talk to the leaders in technology, culture, business, and the arts. We'll cover politics, advocacy, motherhood, writing, mental health, and mostly we'll focus on hope. Join Kim B. Davis, author, playwright, radio personality, event consultant, professional speaker on the Kim B. Davis Show.
Good evening and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis. And this evening, I have the pleasure of introducing to you Henrietta Ivey. She is a political activist, healthcare or home healthcare advocate and provider. Good evening, Henrietta. How are you?
Good evening, Kim. Good evening. How are you?
I am great. So it is Women's History Month, and March is a great time to talk about women and our issues. And so tonight, our topic is saying yes to help. But before we say yes to help, tell us about what is home health care and why is it important and what services that you provide?
Well, home health care is a service that's provided to family members and people in the community who can no longer do their daily activities on their own. So, what a home health care provider does, they come in, they do the light cleaning, cooking, shopping, with the mobility, bathing, grooming. Those are your basic things. And then it's a lot more to it, but those are your basic things with the home health care. We provide them with companionship care, just that person that comes in when family members are not available to do so, and when people again injury in their life where they can't do for themselves.
Right.
I've been doing this business for a little over 28 years. I am now a home care specialist. I started out as a giver, but I'm a specialist now, which I do that role portrays me to train other caregivers to come in and do the work that I just mentioned. And so it's rewarding, but yet it's challenging.
I am sure. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. So thank you for giving us that description and that introduction to what it is that you do. And you do a very important service in the community. So we're a year into the pandemic and people were shut down. We've been locked in for 1 year. So that means women, moms, wives, girlfriends, whatever the title is, have been at home. Husbands, spouses, boyfriends, whatever you call yourself, you have been at home. That also means that children have been at home. And as we were talking about earlier, virtual school, has been at home as well. And, it doesn't, because of the pandemic, I think a lot of people, unless it's your situation, you don't realize the struggles that other people have. If you don't have children, you don't know how difficult it is to manage virtual school and work at the same time, or manage whatever you have going on in your home. Then on the other side of that, you also have elderly and people with disabilities and illness. And none of that changed because we had the pandemic. A lot of that became much more important for people to manage because everyone was at home. You could have had a child with special birth defects that require 24/7 care. If you have someone in your family who had a heart attack and maybe now has to take it easy and can't do all the things that he or she did before, and it was your parent, your grandparent, whoever it is, now you are responsible for taking care of them. So now you're not only just taking care of yourself and maybe your partner or your spouse, but you're also taking care of your children and this particular person. And then of course there's been the whole politicization of what happened in New York, and I'm sure it's happened around the country, where numbers of deaths in nursing homes related to COVID had sort of been covered up, as how the media has been stating it. And all of those are important issues. First off, what would you say about the politicization of nursing homes as places where COVID patients were placed. Do you believe that there was enough conversation around that, or do you believe that it was deemed a quick fix to help with a problem that no one knew how to handle?
I honestly believe there was not enough conversation around it. And I also believe that it was a quick fix. I think of the short end of the stick um, came when families had to endure um, not having enough caregivers where they could, and caregivers that would have been uh, deemed necessary to keep these seniors in their homes, as opposed to, when they get sick with the COVID, now you got to take them out of the home. And since there is really no protocol in place on what to do with our seniors, they automatically go into the nursing homes, which was the quick fix for the policies, I guess, the political system of how they have it set up. But it was definitely not enough conversation on PPE. It wasn't enough conversation on protocol. It wasn't enough conversation around what to do with these people coming into these nursing homes and how they were going to protect the workers and the families, keeping it where you can still visit your loved one. It just went into a quick, they're here, we shutting you off. It was this barricade. It became like a barricade was put up between family and their children. So I think there definitely, was not enough conversation on what to do about it.
And I agree with you. Here in Michigan, I know that we immediately shut down our nursing home and special care facilities. And I have an aunt who's in a facility, and I received a phone call the week that everything shut down, or should I say the very next day. They made a decision that we're going to shut down. We'll communicate with you, but we aren't allowing visitors at this time. And I was comfortable with that, but then we had some deaths in the family, and so then it became this difficult situation of trying to get information to her, but I can't necessarily see her. So now I'm depending on nurses and other people to comfort her and take care of her. Not that they weren't doing it, but just to get information because we weren't able to get it through, and I needed to make sure that she knew about what was happening in the family so that she wasn't kept in the dark, so that whenever we can get back together, it's not this big deluge of, oh, and let me tell you, this person died and this person died and this happened and this happened. And she's, becomes overwhelmed because she's in a nursing home for care that unfortunately no one in the family is skilled at being able to do. But having said all of that, you mentioned something about not having enough caregivers. And I think that is something that is very important. And it's also telling of our society. You know, there's an African proverb that says that when an elderly person dies, a library burns down. And I truly believe that because our elders are people who have seen and done so many things, and there's so much wisdom. And oftentimes, because of modern society and life, we get so busy, we aren't able to do the things that we used to. It used to be, you could send them to somebody's house. They were put in a room, which I'm not saying that that's better, but at least they were around family, and you would hope that family would help. One of the things that I hear consistently from a lot of different families of people that I know, there's always the struggle of, oh, this is mom, or oh, this is dad, and we had to put them in a facility because no one could take care of them. And I have 8 brothers and sisters, but only one of us is able to help. And it is a struggle. And I know that when I put my mother and I had to put my grandmother in a facility, the advice that I was always given was that wherever you put them, you got, of course, look at ratings, look at the care, you go in, you visit, you do all of that. You, if you get an uneasy feeling, pay attention to it, because that means, I paid attention to all of that. But the best advice that I got was put them closest to you, because wherever you are, you will go and see them. You may not be able to depend on everybody else, because people will say that they will do it, but life gets in the way. And I think oftentimes, so many times, women have that responsibility, and women struggle as a whole. Why is it so difficult Henrietta, and
Mhm.
I don't know if you have the answer to this question. If you do, maybe we need to give you $5 million. But why is it that is so difficult for us
Mhm.
to ask for help? Because you mentioned not enough caregivers. We talk about that. We talk
Mhm.
about the struggle to put people in nursing homes. We talk about the difficult balance if you're a sandwich generation where it's your parents and you have children and you're trying to take care of both. How do you do it? And
Mhm.
a lot of women seem to shoulder that responsibility solely. What what would you attribute that to? And then two, why does it seem like it's difficult for us to ask for help?
One, I think, is contribute to the nature of women. I'm
Mm,
not saying men don't have a nurturing side. And the biggest thing I think is where if we're not comfortable with a person taking care of our mother or a great aunt or father who's become ill, we'll take on that burden because we know what they need. We would just suck it up. We would just add that extra pressure to our life with all that's going on. We need to feel comfortable to know that if I'm going to have a caregiver come in or place my mother or father in a nursing facility, I have to make sure that this person know what they need. Now, granted, you can put them into a facility where they'll get their basic needs met, but you know your moms, people know their mothers and fathers' particular needs. And so that's when that kicks in on us like, I know mama like this that way. I know my mother's attitude about this or my dad's attitude about that. And I don't want to put them somewhere where someone will take it offensively when they reach for something, my mother hit their hand. And then it's just all these little things that we know that that person we love need. And if we don't feel comfortable with someone coming in and to our expectations, whether it's in care home or nursing home care, we'll take that on that burden, knowing that it's stressing us out. And so that's one. And secondly, I think that the way that care is set up in this in the United States for people who are not privileged. Um, that tends to be a burden too. We don't want to, we look at everything from a perspective of financial. Can we afford to put mom or dad in a really nice one? Or do we just have a budget where we have to put them somewhere so we can continue to make money to keep moving in our own lives, but at the same time, not break the bank in our own life, putting mom or dad in somewhere that's going to uh, take care of them the way we know they will. So it's financial and it's mental. So we got that going together where mentally we know we want our parents in the best care, but do we have the finances to put them in the best care? So now we stuck in this middle where we gotta do something, and that something sometimes doesn't always pan out for the best for the patient, and that burden becomes overwhelming to the children. And I think that at that point, that's where the struggle begins. It's like, how do we get to a balance? And until we are comfortable with someone else taking care of our loved one, there really is not a lot of balance there, because it takes a lot to screen a person to take care of someone you love. And you want to trust somebody to take care of someone you love. Not only do you want to trust them with their care, you want to trust them with their possessions as well. Um, there have been horror stories where caregivers go into these homes, they appear to be okay. And before you know it, they got people backing their trucks up in your parents' backyard while you at work thinking you got this person there that you can trust. They're cleaning out your parents. And that's not every caregiver. So I want to get some of the dilemmas that I hear. The wonderful thing I liked about caregiving when I was actually given it, I had never had a bad rapport with anybody. And so that's why I became an advocate. So I wanted to teach. And I tell people, if you're not in it for the love and the respect of the game, don't get in it. Because you have to respect not only the person you're taking care of, but you actually have to respect the family. So I think that those are the two burdens. Is trying to find it financially the best care, and then trying to find a trustworthy caregiver. Those are the two barriers.
So that was some great detail. So I need to back up a little bit. So when someone is looking to make the decision to
Mhm.
to either get in-home care or place them in a facility, what are some things or some questions that people need to ask? And I know the basic thing is, is this something that we can do at home? And I heard you when you said financial, and financial is always a part of the conversation, because even when I placed my mother in a facility, I had no idea what the costs were. And then once I learned what the costs were, I was like, oh my goodness, how do people afford this? And it was the same thing. You have to be rich to do this. And then, if you're able to qualify for certain programs, there's certain things that you need to do. Sometimes you have to spend money down, and it might not even be that your parent or whomever it is has that much money, but it's not enough to provide for their care. So then you go in and you start buying things for in planning to make sure that they have it, so that way you can spend the money down wisely. But talk to me about what a conversation should look like within a family if they're looking for care. What should that sound like?
Well, first you want to assess the person that you're seeking to care for your loved one.
Mhm.
And as I go on these assessments, the first thing I look at the connection between the caregiver and the family. And that's important because me being the person I go off of vibes. So when I'm doing an assessment, I sit and you have to scan the environment. You have to be able to meet the client that you're going to be caring for. And the family has to ask pertinent questions. How long have you been doing this care? What were some of the obstacles that you found in doing this care? Um, what happened, what protocols would you have in place when you're taking care of my mother? So if, say for instance, my mother passed out, what would be your first thing to do? And most people, when you're assessing the caregiving, the environment that you're going to be caring in, it's important because you want to make sure that you have a perfect fit. Um, and it's important to also make sure that it can afford you, because we come at different price ranges. You might get a caregiver who charge $100 an hour. If the family, you might get a caregiver who only charge $15 an hour. So and you have to look at the baseline of, can you provide good care?
Mhm.
And then when you're providing good care, what do good care look like? It looks like a whole lot of things. It's just not, and as I stated in many times, it's not just making a meal, grooming, and bathing. Good care is companionship, empathy, and love for in the respect of the person who can no longer do for themselves. We have to understand their mentality has changed. So when you're dealing with a patient, you're dealing with a patient not only with their disease or illness, you're dealing with a patient with their mental status. Because this is a person who at one point was able to get up and cook for themselves and bathe themselves and dress themselves and go out and do their daily living. Now they're at a point where there's an injury or disease where they feel like they may feel like a burden. So when this caregiver is coming in, you want that caregiver to understand that you're dealing with someone who's going through a transition from one day at one point taking care of themselves to a point now where someone have to put diapers on them and feed them and make their meals and invading their personal space. So in doing so, it's just the assessment of the overall. Is this person, will I be able to deal with this patient? Do me and this patient click? Is this person going to be too difficult? Because you can make that decision. Some people can be difficult where, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you react and they react. So it's just those three basic things is it affordable for what you're charging? Do you and that family have a connection? And will you and that patient have a connection? That's most important, that connection with that patient. And eyeballing that will let you know if that's the job for you, or if that's the patient you want to take on. And if it's not the patient one don't want to take on, then move on and let someone else come in who's better equipped with handling such difficulties. So those are really the really basic things is, just, that connection.
And those are important things. And I know for patients that have Alzheimer, and this has become an issue that I've become more aware of, that if you have Alzheimer's And so we're dealing with sundowning, we're, erratic mood swings. Some patients can become violent. They not necessarily violent in the form of they're trying to hurt you. They become combative. And you talk about that, you don't want to be reactionary. Talk about, as a caregiver, how do you handle that? Because that's an amazing skill to me, because I watch the the staff go through that with my grandmother. My grandmother was healthy as an ox, but
Mm-hmm.
had dementia, was sliding into Alzheimer's, and she just became more and more difficult. And not that it was necessarily a bad thing, but it was her personality was breaking down, and it was becoming more of what her base personality is, from what I understand. And so she didn't have patience for a whole lot of anything. And
Mm-hmm.
so things that would have gone, or that she would have let go of, now all of a sudden she was snapping at people, and she was testy, and she was frustrated, and she didn't like people, really trying to dote on her. She would get mad unless it was somebody that she really trusted.
And you said the key point right there is that trust factor. With the Alzheimer's, I've had two patients that were Alzheimer's.
Hmm.
I didn't I one was a little more combative than the other, but I can say the last one that I had was really a pleasure to work with. Um, and I believe it was that connection. It goes back to the question of that connection.
Hmm.
When you are dealing with an Alzheimer's patient or client, that baseline has to be that first meet. You have to have a meet. It's a meeting. And if you're sitting there and if that patient is connecting with you,
Hmm.
9 times out of 10, you can kind of control them when they get to those combative moves, because now they have a trust factor. That first meeting, let them know, okay, I like her or I like him. They have to trust you. But then when that combativeness kick in, you can be the advocate and say, hey, wait a minute, Miss Jones. Or you could be like, it's almost like dealing with a person with autism. Hold on, what's wrong? Miss Jones, what are you doing today? Why are you being mean to me? You got to kind of calm them down. It's
Hmm.
those skills you learn as you get the job, because you can go through all the training. They give you all these step by steps on how to handle a combative patient. You talk softly to them. You let them take control, but you're kind of like guiding them into that control. But it really goes to the trust factor. That combativeness, for me, what worked for me was like when I would see my client get combative or forget that I was there for their need, I would just stand and say, hey, you know who I am today, right? And they'd be like, yeah, I know who you are. I'm like, okay, so why are you being mean to me? You do everything with a smile. I'm just like what people do with a smile. And they'd be like, oh, I'm sorry. And it'll somehow it'll circle back around, like, oh, and it'll snap back. But it's conversation, it's connection, it's wording. If you don't get combative with a combative person, even just you have to formulate you have to have comfort words for combative patients, particularly with Alzheimer's. And that usually brings them back around. So you learn that skill really as you work with your patients. Everything is like really hands on. We go in with training, but the real training comes when you're working with those types of patients, and it's hands on day to day. Excuse me, it's day to day. So in that day to day that you're working with this patient, you get to learn what to do with them day to day. And then you start to formulate a list of what to do, and you know how they're going to act. You start to see when it's coming. So you learn their patterns, and so you know what to say. So it's, excuse me, it's just learning your patients when you're working with them. But definitely with Alzheimer's patients, you have to be empathetic with them. And you have to allow them to go through those motions, but be ready to comfort them and be ready to calm them down at a moment's notice. It's not an easy task, but you learn that along the way. Every situation is different and every person is different, and you learn those skills accordingly. So,
And those are great skills, because I will tell you, watching the staff work with my grandmother and my mother, I was like, you all are godsends, because both of them, both sets of people, were just wonderful in terms of how they were able to communicate, how they were able to calm down in diffuse situations where, either my mother or my grandmother would have a moment where, something would have set them off for whatever reason. And they're like, nope, nope, we're good. We're good. And, and I would often tell my mother, I don't have that skill. And she said, well, if I was at home, I said, mm-mm, because she had a neurological disease, so we weren't able to take care of her anyway. However, I would always tell her, I'm like, I don't have the skills that they have. I said, but I'm blessed and you're blessed that we found this facility and that the people here are genuinely decent people. And there no one's trying to abuse you, like you said. No one's trying to steal from you or take things. Because I know when my mom was in a facility, I had to put her name in all of her clothes. And I remember in the beginning not doing that. And then things would come up missing. And and people would say, oh, such and such went in there and didn't realize that was their closet. Or I'm like, nope. So now I had to go and write names and everything, and I remember that. And those are things that you tell people so that you know it, but if you've never been through that, you don't know.
Right. That's right.
But I want to go back to something we were talking about earlier when we were talking about women, and you were talking about the financial load, determining, what your relative needs. And because women are more nurturing, as you said earlier, typically we're the ones modeling behavior. And I know specifically because I've had conversations with people. I was at an event once and I was with my sons. I don't have girls. You know this. I have two wonderful, handsome, brilliant little black boys.
Gorgeous.
Thank you. And this woman said to me, she said, oh, you have some handsome boys. Are you going to have a girl? And I said, no. And she says, well, you have to have a girl because girls are the ones that take care of you. And I thought, no, I married my husband and it's a family full of boys and they all took care of their mom and grandparents. But because people believe this, what would you say to a mother who is struggling right now to take care of family? She has a daughter, and this daughter is sitting back watching. And Henrietta, I don't know about you, but I know in the pandemic, I've had conversations with friends of mine. We are like, we do too much. Like, seriously, I need help. And it is a big thing for me to say that I need help. Of course, it's trying to figure out sometimes how to pay for help. But if you're a mom and you can afford it and your daughter is watching you, what would you say to that mother if that was your friend?
Being a mother of four, I have two gorgeous sons and two beautiful daughters. Um, and as a mother, I can remember doing a lot of the things that I see now as, I say to myself, wow, I really had it good. Because I came up in an era where women taught women what to do. It was that village of women, older women, aunties, grandmothers, neighbors, mothers, other mothers, who would bring the girls together and have a conversation about our duties as a woman. And it wasn't always, you're supposed to cook, clean, take care of your family, and be obedient. That was part of the conversation, not in those words. But when you talk about raising daughters who are watching you, you definitely have to have a conversation because they're watching, and you have to be mindful of what you say, how you presentate yourself in front of your daughter. If they see you're stressing, then they're watching every little thing. They're watching how you write the checks out. They're watching how you react to certain things that goes on in the house. They're just sitting back and they're observing. So I would say to mothers, be mindful of how you represent yourself. And I'm not saying it's bad. It's not a bad thing that we lose our mind. Okay, it's okay not to be okay. And we see that our daughters are watching. We bring them in and we start to explain to them why we're breaking down. We don't give them the rough parts of it, but we let them know, hey, I come here, baby. And because you'll see the reaction of your child. And you let them know, look, mama's everything is going to be okay. And they may ask you, well, mommy, why are you crying? Or mommy, why are you upset? And you kind of like break it down. Mama is trying to take care of some things and things are not falling into place, and it's okay. I'm upset because things are not falling into place, but it's gonna be okay. It's about wording. I mean, you have to use those words that verbatim, but you kind of find a way to comfort your daughter and let them know that it's okay to be strong and it's okay to break down, because sometimes we as women, we're so strong and we're so endowed in holding everything together. We're the glue to the family.
Yeah.
And sometimes that glue can get a little unattached. And it's
Mhm.
okay to let your daughter know that, hey, look, it was overwhelming for me, but we're going to be okay. However, a mother wants to word it, but you let that daughter know it's okay. And what you're going through is temporary. And let them know, whatever word you feel is comforting to your daughter, you use those it's comforting words, letting them know it's okay to have these moments. And what we don't want to do is have them believing that we're responsible for everything, because that's a big burden. Because I grew up being responsible for 6 siblings under me. And, it was a big help to my mom. I'm sure she appreciated it. But I didn't want that burden that soon, because I saw my mother when her own struggles. So my instinct, I immediately put myself in the position to be the next person in line to help my mom. And that was a lot. So I always said to myself, when I have children, particularly daughters, I would never let them be responsible for any of their siblings. They are responsible for having each other's back, and that was it. But me as a mother and as a woman, I wanted my daughters to have the freedom to decide if this is what they wanted to do. And so I always kept the pathways clear and the doors open for us to conversate about what they felt about watching me or seeing me doing something, or what bothered them about something I done. I always kept a line of communication open, particularly with my daughters, because I wanted my daughters to grow up to be strong women. Not strong women to they didn't need a man, but strong women knowing that in their minds they can be all that they can be and still be a woman and still be that soft side that they are born to be. So it's just really having that great conversation with your daughters and allowing them to talk to you and ask you what's going on and being honest with them, not giving them, too much, but being honest and letting them know feeling it today, or it would just, whatever this is going on, just have an open, good conversation. I would say the good thing about just have a good line of communication with your daughters.
And I think that is a great segue to our last question. So I know we've sort of danced around this subject quite a bit, but specifically, is there anything that if someone right now, while we're still in the pandemic, dealing with COVID-19, and although numbers are going down,
Mhm.
is there any one particular thing that stands out to you that someone should ask when seeking care?
The one thing that stand out to me, I would all, it would ask is, if that person has been tested. Because as we go into these homes, the fear for me is not knowing if the person I'm caring for is tested, or have they had COVID before, or have they been exposed to COVID from another family member but didn't catch it per se. So I think the number one question is to make sure to be safe in this while we're still in this pandemic and you're caring for someone in their home, is to find out if they've been tested, to find out if they had COVID. It's you the same question you get asked when you go to the hospitals and the dentist offices, and um, you go to your own appointments. You ask those same questions when you're going into these homes. The protocol for me when I talk to my workers is, for me, when I do my assessment, the first thing I ask is, have your parent or a mother or father been exposed to COVID? Have they been tested, or have they had it? And how long have they had it? Because you don't want to put yourself in a predicament where you catch it, or you make sure that you're safe going in. So it's those two things that, and I'll ask a person, and to say to a person who's seeking help, make sure the person that you're seeking to hire have been tested, or have they been exposed, because these are two people coming together. And so that's important. Each person needs to know on both sides, are we safe? Have you been tested? Have you been exposed? And that will open up the dialogue to the safety measures of it all.
Excellent, Henrietta. Thank you for coming on and sharing with us about saying yes to help. Now, tell us how we can find you, where you are on social media, and also because you have a show, tell us about your show.
I'm on social media. I'm a Facebook junkie. If people look up Henrietta Ivey, they will see all these selfies, and I must say I just love taking pictures. I like making people feel good. So my smile is my biggest thing. I try to bring that sunshine to people. So I'm on Facebook. So just look me up in Henrietta Ivey Facebook. I'm also on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. I have a show called What's Going On in Detroit Politics in the Park. We kind of took a break because it was things were back to back. So we're going to try to pick it back up possibly this Saturday. And we normally run it from on every Saturday from 7 to 8 p.m. So yes, that's our little podcast where we talk about marriage, we talk about relationships, we talk about home care, and we talk about everything political that affects our lives from day to day.
Excellent. So we have to make sure that we tune in to listen, because your show is always fascinating with some of the guests that you have on and the different topics that you cover. So
Thank
thank
you.
you again, Henrietta. I appreciate you coming on our show with us.
Well, thank you, Kim, for having me. I enjoyed talking to you, and I miss you guys in person.
I know, I miss you too. Hopefully the world will open up soon and we'll all be able to get together.
It's getting better. So I tell everybody, let's get to those safe numbers so we can all congregate in peace once again.
That's right. Amen. I'm ready for it. So thank you guys for tuning in to the Kim B. Davis Show. You can find me, Kim B. Davis. Actually, it's Kimberly Batchelor Davis, which is spelled Batchelor Davis, no hyphen. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, and Snapchat. You can also find the show on youtube.com/Kimberly Batchelor Davis. And you can find out more information about me on my website at www.kimbdavis.com. Thank you guys again for tuning in. And as always, remember, be magnificent.